This episode of the New Medical Nomads podcast is brought to you by Nomadicare. Now, personally, I love Nomadicare. I've used Nomadicare, and I recommend the company to all new travelers. What Nomadicare does is it takes the fear out of getting set up with a bad recruiter, which is the biggest fear that you have jumping into this journey. So they sit down, they interview recruiters, they vet them, get them on a list, and then provide them to you as a free service, as a free recruiter matchmaking service in order to get you started on your journey. Now, usually you only get 2 recruiters going through Nomadicare, but being a listener of the show, you can get 3. So this is how it's going to work. You go to nomadicare.com/Dylan. You will get set up with 3 recruiters to be on your dream team, as well as a guide to get you started on your journey.
Josh, can you please tell the listeners where we're at in the world right now?
St. Louis, Missouri.
And welcome to another episode of the New Medical Nomads podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Dylan Callier. Today I'm with my longest friend, Josh, here, who is a police officer. And we're going to be talking about a very serious subject about staying safe on the road, staying safe in new places, and hopefully having a little bit of humor thrown in there as well with such a serious topic. But Josh, can you give the listeners just a little bit about you, a little bit about your career and what you do?
Yeah, I've done various law enforcement and security jobs over the years. I've been involved since 2013. I've had some jail experience, I've had some street experience, retail security, bouncing, you name it. I've kind of had a security background for a long time.
Well, very good. I think we'll just start with some of the questions. First thing I wanted to cover is staying safe. There's a couple apps out there that you can use. One is the Trulia app. You can actually look at the crime reports of a certain area, and that will give you an idea of whether or not that area is safe for you to live, or if you should be thinking about going 20 minutes, 30 minutes down the road instead when you're looking for that Airbnb, looking for that apartment, looking for that roommate. Secondly, you can also on the interview ask the person that you're going to be working for where would they send their daughter or where would they send their son to live, and they should give you some really good insight onto where areas you might want to stay clear of and areas that you would be okay with. And it's not necessarily saying like seriously like carrying muggings, things like that, but even simple things like having your car broken into, which I know that you've had in the past as well. What would you like someone to know, a traveler, a listener, to know about vehicle safety?
So all those things you mentioned are important. Looking at crime reports, asking people that live in the area, asking the locals, what happens here. At the same time, you have to keep in mind that crime can happen anywhere, regardless of where you're at. If you're out in the middle of the desert, parked on the side of the road, you might be just as likely to get your car broken into or be assaulted or be robbed as you are parked in downtown, LA, New York, St. Louis. So crime can happen anywhere. Just being aware of that is really important. So as far as vehicle safety goes, obviously first and foremost wear a seatbelt when you're operating your vehicle. That's important. And there are a lot of safety features in new cars. Called side airbags, advanced door locks, auto braking features, because a lot of people like to text and drive. Unfortunately, in vehicles, when you're operating, when you're sitting still, the most dangerous thing is other vehicle operators. And usually it's due to distracted driving, whether it's texting, smoking, e-cigs, radio, you name it. There's a ton of distractions. I've seen people reading books while they're driving down the highway. It's just dangerous to be in a vehicle, period. But just staying aware of your surroundings is really important, no matter where you're at. Like I said, middle of nowhere, downtown, just staying aware of what's around you. And no matter where you're at, city streets, highways, middle of nowhere, they'll do that anywhere. Reading, drinking, eating, makeup, whatever. People do all of it. I guess because there's downtime while you're driving. People don't realize that the act of driving is pretty important. That's why there's an accident per year. Being in a vehicle in general is pretty dangerous.
Yeah, I would say that accidents happen so often. It's not a if it's going to happen, it's a when it's going to happen. Similar to kind of being broke down on the side of the road as well, and knowing how to change a tire, knowing how kind of the tools and stuff that you need in the back of the trunk in case something were to happen, in case you get broke down. You have a blanket in case it's really cold. You might have a couple snacks or some bottled water back there as well.
So yeah, those are all good points. It's important to not only in with your vehicles, but in a lot of scenarios to be somewhat prepared ahead of time with stuff like that. Just be a little prepared, because when something happens, sometimes, and I've got first-hand experience in this, it can take a long time for first responders to get there. So when some sort of incident goes down, you are your own first responder. You know, you have to take care of business yourself. Initially, until some sort of professional gets there, whether EMTs, firefighters, police, whatever your situation is. But initially, you're the first responder. If you don't know what you're doing, or you're underprepared, it can be way more detrimental to you. Whether you've got an injury, or your car's on fire, your house is on fire, you name it. If you don't know what to do, or you don't have the tools or knowledge, it can be much more detrimental in the long run. So, in a time when seconds matter, the police, fire, EMTs might be minutes away. So, be prepared yourself, I say.
Is there any other ways that somebody could kind of prepare for that?
For what in particular?
Yeah, more like vehicle accidents.
Like I said, just being aware, but just really being aware, and it bleeds over into other scenarios as well. When you're walking down the street, when you're at home, it's just being aware. I can't stress it enough. Having your head on a swivel. So outside of vehicle safety, and we can get into this more later. People look for people that look like victims when they want to commit crimes. So people might case your house, they might case you initially within the first 5 minutes before they decide they want to mug you on the street. They're going to look at you, they're going to look at your house, they're going to look at your car maybe, and see if it's an easy target. If it looks like an easy target, if you look like a victim, if your house looks like it's easy to break into, your truck, your car, whatever, they're going to look for weak spots. So if you're walking down the street and you're not paying attention, your head's in your phone, maybe you've got, maybe you look important. You're a professional on your way to some new job in a new city. You're distracted, right? So the biggest piece of advice I have is to keep your eyes open. It's kind of a professional term. A lot of military, police guys like to use that term, and it basically means staying aware of your surroundings, right? Whether you're in your car, whether you're walking down the street, you're in the middle of nowhere, right? It's important to know what's around you. So a lot of criminals, me having some jail experience, I had a lot of one-on-one time with criminals. I'd ask them questions, I'd ask them who was the perfect person to rob. They almost never had a consistent answer, but it was, and honestly, it would surprise you a lot of the time. They don't prefer robbing women. If that's the only option, they'll do it. The seasoned guys, the new guys, they'll rob anybody. The seasoned guys, the new guys, they'll rob anybody. See, criminals, hard guys, they don't like to rob women because they cause a scene. They scream, oh my God, somebody stole my purse. They scream really loud, right? Creates a big scene, and there's always some hero citizen somewhere willing to step in, grab the purse snatcher, right? So they like to rob people that aren't paying attention, people who aren't going to see it coming, right? Men who are small in stature. No offense, Dylan. But one thing they say generally is that if the guy looks in the eyes, right? You're looking around, you see someone, you acknowledge them, right? For some reason, a lot of people today don't like to do that, like to avoid interaction with people. I'm a little antisocial myself. But just because you look someone in the eye doesn't mean you want to talk to them, right? You're just acknowledging their presence. I know you're here, right? I'm looking at you. I'm looking at you guys. I'm acknowledging, right? Just that acknowledgement, looking at you guys. I'm acknowledging, right? Just that acknowledgement lets that person know that they're there. That alone might be enough to deter a crime. On the street, whether you're in your car. A lot of guys get uncomfortable at stoplights. You you're sitting there and the car pulls up to you and you don't want to look at it. You can't, I don't want to look at that person. They're not going to hurt you. They're more likely to hurt you if you don't look at them.
Got it.
You know?
Okay.
Throw them a glance. You know, I know you're there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it lets them know you're aware, right? You don't look like a victim.
Got it. Got it.
So, there's one rant for you.
All right. One rant down. So I had a couple of questions.
Yeah, what's up?
When kind of coming, I'm thinking of a certain area. It probably doesn't happen all that often anymore. Coming out of a grocery store and you didn't park under the light, it's over in the dark or something like that. You're approaching and there's another vehicle beside your vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything that can kind of prevent anything going wrong or anything to?
Yeah. I mean, everyone tends to get that like sixth sense, right? Sometimes you can maybe walk out into the parking lot and kind of feel your spine tingle, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's happened to me. I've had people follow me. I don't know, maybe they recognize me. So it goes back to staying aware. The people who are aware make the sixth sense. The people who have their headphones in and they're jamming their newest album while they're walking out or whatever might not be the most aware folks, and they might not have that sixth sense because they're lost in something, right? So if you're aware and you get that sixth sense, it's always important to act on it in some way, right? You need to prepare yourself. It depends on a person who is more fight rather than flight. Then you may have a gun on your hip. You may have you may say, I may need to use this next 5 to 10 minutes. Just preparing yourself mentally for something that can happen. Someone like you who's more into martial arts, you might think of what could happen. There's a car next to my car, and I'm parked in the back of the lot, right? Someone else who is maybe not so much fight might say, I might wait 5 minutes to see if that car leaves, and that's okay to do, right? Yeah. I would say just preparing yourself mentally before you just walk out there, all head in the air, not paying any attention, get in your car. Good way to get robbed. And it's a subject I'm going to bring up a lot is being aware.
Yeah.
It's a subject I'm going to bring up a lot is being aware.
Yeah.
That's really important. And then once you are aware of your surroundings, when you see the car out there parked next to you, we call it mental reps. Walking through scenarios in your mind mentally to prepare yourself for what could happen. Anything could happen. Nothing could happen. But being prepared is important.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think I've actually brought it up on the show yet, but yes, I did martial arts competitively for 12 years. Something that kind of kept me out of trouble, mostly, in high school.
I think I got you out of trouble a little bit, too.
I think it got me into trouble, mostly. Yeah, and so I got to be around, and most of the police force in our hometown was actually in that same school, that same martial arts building, and so I got to learn a lot through them as well. And something I did learn is that now you get these features on your car where you can actually control the ability to unlock multiple doors, or you can keep it just like your single door. So if you notice when you go to a vehicle, you hit unlock. It usually only unlocks the driver's side first, and then it'll unlock the other doors after that if you hit it twice. You want to keep it like that, and some cars now have the options to just on the first go unlock all of them. But basically that's made so that there's only one entrance into the car.
Yeah.
And so if somebody's on the other side of the vehicle and that other door is still locked, they cannot enter the vehicle, which is ultimately, somebody tries to hijack the vehicle, somebody tries to get some money from you, whatever. Your vehicle is the most powerful weapon in that situation. You can always hit the gas and go.
Absolutely.
And never comply with anybody holding a gun, holding a knife, or anything like that. Worst case scenario. But that doesn't happen if all the doors are locked and they can enter at any point. If they're trying to enter through the driver's side, then you have your own situation. But that was something I wanted to bring up. Yeah,
there's a lot of built-in safety features on cars nowadays, which is really cool. And as far as like I said, being prepared, having your keys in hand. Someone may try to steal your vehicle, steal your keys. I don't know. A lot of times, someone gets into trouble. The alarm function on your keychain is, it draws a lot of attention. One screen, the bad guys don't want that. They don't want the loud, attention. Everybody look at me. They want to do their stuff in the dark and the quiet and have no one know about it. They want to get in and get out. So, when stuff goes down like that, it's important to, have built-in safety features in the car. New cars are really cool. They do have to work for you. If you're like me, I have an old car, an old truck. You've got to do all the hard work. My clicker doesn't work anymore. So, when I get out at a gas station or something, I make sure my passenger side door is locked. That way, if I'm on the gas on the other side of my truck, someone wants to open my passenger side door and loot half of my stuff and run the other way, I can't get on track and stop them, right? I get out at the gas pump. It's habit at this point. I look over and make sure my door locked. If it's not, I hit the lock button, right? Call me paranoid, but I've had my truck broken. So
I know you have.
When it happens to you, it's too late at that point to be prepared. So
How long were you without music?
too long.
Too long.
Yeah, too long. It was far too long. One day is long enough. So
What a joke I always say, especially going taking current contracts out in the West Coast, is when I bring up those questions of, hey, is this a good area? Am I going to be, if I'm doing home health, visiting people's homes, what areas should I be aware of? Should I dress professionally or should I dress in scrubs? That way, if somebody sees me on the street, they won't, be more or less likely to approach me. And I always joke like, hey, I'm from St. Louis, I know how it is, and I kind of lead off that. But it's just a little funny joke I say. Before we started recording, we were talking a little bit about alcohol and driving. And obviously, being a health professional, obviously being enforcement, we're not advocating this in any way. I'm not talking about drinking and driving, because we all know the horrible effects of that. But knowing some of the laws behind it, say I'm having a couple beers, I am wanting. I don't want to drive. I know I'm not welcome to drive, but I also don't have a place to sleep. Can I sleep in my vehicle?
So there's yes and no. There's kind of a workaround there. And again, I urge you, especially if you're a traveler, to learn the laws in your state, learn the local laws, right? You don't have to learn them to the T, but familiarize yourself, right? Learn stuff that could apply to you. If you're the kind of person that's going to go out and have, several beers, and maybe look up, the laws where you're at. But generally speaking, let's say you tie a couple on, you don't have anywhere to go, you're new in town, you want to sleep in your car. Most cops view that as a good thing, right? You're not trying to operate your vehicle. But at the end of the day, a stickler, maybe someone who's more of a crab-ass police officer, might, if they're on the hunt for something, they're bored, they're having a bad night, whatever. They want to come mess up your night, they see you sleeping in your car, they knock on your window. They ask you how many beers you've had to drink. At the end of the day, you can still operate that vehicle. It means you're capable of committing DWI. Give you the whole field sobriety test, you fail, they can take you to jail, right? Because you're in a car that's capable of being operated. So, and my unprofessional opinion, this is not, I'm not a law professional, don't take this as advice, don't use this in court. Don't use my name in court. So, take your keys and hide them. The cop comes up and gives you some crap. You say, officer, I'm sorry, I lost my keys. I can't drive, that's why I'm here. I've got nowhere to go, so I'm sleeping in my car. I'll find my keys in the morning. At that point, you can't operate the car, it's unoperable. There are no keys, there's no key fob, right? Normally with the key fob, they'll start within a certain distance, so hide them somewhere fairly close by, right? Far enough away the car won't start when you press the button. And at that point, he'll probably ask you to get out. He'll search you and determine you don't have your keys on you, right? You'll be like, oh, okay, well, that makes sense. You say, I lost them at the bar, I don't know where they're at. When in reality, they're sitting on your back tire or whatever, right? So that's kind of one way to get around that. And like I said, most of the time, the fact you're not actively driving around, we'll let that cop know, okay, I'm a sensible person here. but really it's luck of the draw. You get someone who wants to be a stickler that night, and it might be your unlucky night. So, and really it kind of removes the temptation altogether. You get in your car, you wake up an hour later, and you're like, I'm kind of still a little drunk, but I can make it. Yeah, let's roll the dice on this, right? If your keys are somewhere else, it kind of removes the temptation. Yeah. Driving drunk is bad.
Yeah.
At the end of the day. So,
and man, yeah, like working in the hospitals, working in the outpatient centers, you hear the bad stories of, I was struck by a drunk driver and now I have brain injury, or you read it on the chart, or something horrible like that, and then they walk away free. And so,
it's all the time.
definitely not advocating it, but
all the time.
Yeah. You mentioned having the alarm code next to you, and I do know, and all them that sleep with their, if they don't own a self-defense weapon, they do sleep with their keys next to them in bed. And then if they hear somebody who's not welcome in the home, inside the home, they can hit the alarm button, and then that brings attention to the house, and then keys. And if they don't own a self-defense weapon, they do sleep with their keys next to them in bed. And then if they hear somebody who's not welcome in the home, inside the home, they can hit the alarm button, and then that brings attention to the house, and then keeps them safe that way.
Yeah, it's wonderful. Wakes up the neighbors, suddenly everyone's aware of, at least your car alarm's going off.
Yeah.
People might, if it doesn't go off, eventually someone's going to come over and figure out what's going on, right?
Absolutely.
Neighbor Dan's got to work in the morning. He's not gonna have that. He's gonna have that car alarm going off all night. So someone's gonna come check on you.
Absolutely.
For better or for worse. But I think it's a wonderful idea. Like I said, it depends on what kind of person you are. Some people sleep with a gun next to their bed. Some people sleep with their keys next to their bed. So whatever suits you, really. Personally, I have a gun.
There you go. That's a good segue for those travelers that wish to carry with a concealed carry, or wish to travel with a gun, whether they be in an RV, travel trailer, maybe they're actually traveling with their home, maybe they're just in their own vehicle kind of driving down the road. Is there anything that travelers should be aware of?
Absolutely. So it gets real hairy from state to state. And and it can from municipality to municipality as well. But generally, when you're driving, state to state is kind of the most important, right? You can pass through a city or a town in no time and really get through. So it's not super important. If you're planning some driving route, it's not super important to look up the laws for every single city you're going to pass through, right? That's unrealistic.
Yeah.
But state to state is much more realistic, much more important. Here in Missouri, recently we passed this constitutional carry law. Everyone who's a citizen of Missouri can carry open carry, which is outside of the pants, visible weapon. You can carry concealed. You don't have to have any training. You don't have to have anything. You just have to be 18. You got to have a gun. That's yours, preferably. And you can carry, right? Which there was a concept. We can get into that later if you like. But I guess just don't go away. You can go right across the river, and you can't do that. That's bad. They require, that your gun's in one spot and your ammo's in another spot, locked up, and completely two different areas of your vehicle. That way they're totally unaccessible, right? And from a self-defense point of view, that you put those laws. So if you're traveling from here to there, you need to be aware of that.
Yeah.
Because as soon as you cross the state line, suddenly the gun on your hip shouldn't be on your hip. You can get your concealed carry license. You can still get that in Missouri, even with the constitutional carry law, and I recommend you do. Learning about weapons, learning about the laws in the state, because there are still laws that pertain to carrying within the state of Missouri that are important to learn. Learning about firearm safety. CCW licenses, concealed carry licenses, are not always reciprocal from state to state. Your travel path may include a couple states that don't.
Yeah.
So just because you have a Missouri CCW license doesn't mean you can carry in Illinois, doesn't mean you can carry in Utah or wherever else you're going.
Got it.
So it's important to research that. If you're the kind of person that's going to carry a firearm, Even a knife. There are different knife laws as far as lengths, as far as how the knife operates, if it's spring assisted. I mean, there are a ton of laws.
Got it.
So it's very important to research.
Glad you brought that up because other items of self-defense like pepper spray or stun guns or tasers. Is there anything that the listeners might want to know about those?
So I mean, there's a couple of like unwritten rules, and again, it's kind of a personal opinion of mine. You need to be proficient, I would say, not proficient. I would say not just familiar. You need to be proficient with what you're carrying. Okay? You need to know how it operates. You need to be capable of operating it not only in a regular situation, in a high stress situation, right? So you may know, being a medical professional, when your adrenaline gets pumping, fine motor skills go out the window. So in a high stress situation, fine motor skills are gone, right? So on small movements, it's no good, right? Gross motor skills and muscle memory are what's important. So, like I said, be proficient with what you want to carry. If you want to carry pepper spray, that's fine. Know where it's at all times. Have it somewhere on your person. Something that's important for all the women out there, ladies, especially nowadays, it seems like more and more people are wanting to carry guns, and more people are anti-guns. Guns are a hot topic lately. But women that want to carry guns, they don't have anywhere to put it. They don't want to put it on them. They want to put it in their purse, which is no good. It's in your purse. It's essentially a paperweight. Because more often than not, when a woman gets robbed, they go for the purse. That's where all the goodies are, right? So now do they have your purse, but they've got your gun. And you don't want them to have your gun. So if you're going to carry a gun at all, carry it on your person, right? Personally, I think the whole point of having a gun is so the person, whatever's happening, they don't necessarily know you have a gun beforehand, because if they did, they may not mess with you. But if they know about it, they might go for that first, which happens with a lot of police officers. More often than not, they go for your gun first. It's right there. It's really noticeable. It's intimidating. It's on your hip. So if you're going to carry something, be proficient with it. Know where it's at all times. Keep it on your person, not in your purse. It's two close words, very similar words. Person, not purse, or wallet, or what have you.
Listener question?
Go for it. What's the question?
What about women who want to use close-range weapons?
Like,
Close-range weapons.
What was the question? Can you repeat it?
She wanted to know about women's that wanted to use something other than a firearm, a close-range weapon, whether that be pepper spray, a knife, a sap, a blackjack, whatever you want to call it. They've got those personal defense little spikes that you can put on your keychain. Again, number one rule: be proficient. Know how to use it. Know how it works. When to use it. Obviously, you don't want to do anything illegal. But the number one thing, usually what happens with women and with men of small stature is, you can pull out a knife, you can pull out your pepper spray, whatever. More often than not, whoever is attacking you is going to try to overpower you, right? That's their number one goal. They're trying to get something away from you. Whether that be your wallet, your money, your purse, your car keys, whatever. They're trying to get something away from you. If you put something between you and them, a knife, pepper spray, some other weapon, they're going to try to get that away from you first, right? So it gets a little hairy at that point. If you're not if you don't know how to use what you're trying to use, they're probably going to get it from you. They've been doing this thing more than you've been doing. Okay, this is probably your first time. It's probably not their first time. Okay, probably not the first time they've had a knife in their face. Probably not the first time they've had pepper spray in their face. They've probably been sprayed many times. They know exactly what it feels like. Okay, so it's important to, like I said, not only have it on your person, but to know how to use it proficiently. If you don't know how to use it proficiently, I recommend not even having it. It's more important to just let them have what they're going to have and go off, and sure, they might get away with your purse, your cell phone, your car keys, your whatever, but they're not going to stab you with your own knife. They're not going to spray you with your own pepper spray. They're not going to beat you with your own club, right? Because at the end of the day, more than criminals, they don't want to hurt you. They just want your stuff. Okay.
Very good. 2 points. One, you keep pointing at me every time you say small stature. I'll have you know I have a 6-foot personality. And
That's important. You don't have a 6-foot stature.
Secondly, you brought up the point of kind of being in the moment and the adrenaline that goes into these situations, and especially for those travelers that want to travel with a firearm.
Yeah.
I just want them to be covered up what law enforcement goes through for their training. So could you give a little overview about everything that you've had to go through in order to be proficient with your
So I mean, I've trained quite a bit, specifically with the gun that's by my bed. I know that thing inside and out, right? I feel like it's important. Because you have this general idea, you would think the police train a lot, right? When in all reality, we only have to qualify with our firearm once a year. But from movies, TV, media, it makes it seem like police are training all the time. Don't get me wrong, there are units out there that do train all the time. Special weapons tags, there are all these high response teams that train constantly. And those are the guys you want showing up when stuff hits the fan. But you're run-of-the-mill street cops, not all the time. A lot of guys do, most guys don't. Guys and gals. So a lot of criminals, a lot of regular folks assume police train all the time, right? They just assume it happens, and it's true. A lot of criminals say, well, I shoot at least once a week because I've got to be better than the cops. I know they're probably training more than that. They've got a gun on their hip 8 hours, 12 hours a day. The cops, I've got to be better than them. So I go out and I shoot my gun all the time. I do crazy stuff with my gun. You know, I do, you know, timed drills. I'm doing this, I'm doing that. So there are a lot of criminals out there that are over-training the police, outperforming the police, right? It's crazy to think about, but it happens all the time. So if it's something you want to do, it goes back into proficiency. What I mean about being proficient with how you want to defend yourself, how you want to defend your loved ones. Don't just buy a gun and toss it on the shelf and say, oh, that's there for when I need it. You need to know how it operates, not only for defense, but for safety, right? The last thing you want to do is hurt yourself or hurt someone you love in an everyday situation or a high-stress situation. Be proficient with how you choose to defend yourself, whether that's a $10,000 home security system. Obviously know how it works. That's important, right? If it's a $300 gun on your shelf, know how it works. Go out to the range, train yourself, ask for help if you don't know how, if you're new to the idea. That's one thing you'll discover amongst firearms enthusiasts, is that they are always willing to help someone who's not as educated. Same way with weightlifters, people who like to work out. There's like a camaraderie there. It's musicians, I mean, you name it. People are always willing. People of the same ilk, people who like the same stuff are always willing to lend a hand. And guns are a little scary, but guys that like guns are willing to help you out.
Very good. There is one more thing that I wanted to mention before we kind of move on into the next question. There are some apps out there, and I don't remember the name off the top of my head, but I will be including them in the show notes that I know of conceal and carry laws. Obviously, this isn't the top priority place to go for conceal and carry laws state by state, but it is readily accessible, so I do like it for that first step in order to make sure that you're familiar with the laws that are in the area, but obviously don't take it as as actual law. You want to go into and study the laws themselves. For those that are wanting to take the next step, those that are wanting to look at the laws of the new state that they're in, the new counties that they're in, where can they go for that?
So first and foremost, let's say you don't have a smartphone, you don't have a computer, you can call the police or the local municipality, the county, the state, whatever. You can call them. There's some emergency lines. You can get through. You can ask them questions about the laws. Hey, I'm new to the area. They'll be more than happy to give you a hand and let you know what's going on. If you're more of a DIY kind of person, there are apps. I don't know the name specifically. There are apps that exist that kind of a compendium of laws for certain subjects as far as carrying concealed weapons, knives, you name it. There are apps that exist. There are apps that exist for safety.
Yep.
Like that Be Safe app we were talking about
Yep.
earlier. I knew existed. It's kind of like kind of operates similar to the Find My iPhone app, Find Phone app. There's a GPS function. You can hit the I'm in trouble button, and kind of alerts the authorities to where you're at, and they can kind of track where your phone is.
Yeah. I've seen some apps out there, and sometimes they have like wearable. They almost look like jewelry where you can hit a button and it'll call the authorities for you. There's also apps out there like Life Alert. Yeah,
Life Alert. Yeah.
There's also out there that you can hold a button. Say you're in the scenario that comes to mind is like you're in an Uber, you don't know the person, you're by yourself, and then all of a sudden you start noticing like, hey, they're not going the direction that I need to.
Yeah.
You can hold a button, and then as long as you're holding it, now if you were to let go of that button and enter a code in within a certain period of time, the local authorities will be notified, and a address or a location will be sent to them.
I feel like that's important.
Yeah.
If you're the kind of person that does a lot of traveling that way, because Ubers can be weird. They're not taxis. They're not licensed. It's
Right.
real big on the side. Here's your Uber on the side of the car. It is important to have something like that readily available. The old Life Alert button on the phone. That is important. It's important to look into. Personal safety. People say they're, I'm a safe person, right? You can ask anyone that. Are you safe? Absolutely, of course I'm safe. But to what point is the question? I feel like in today's world, today's America, it's important to be safe, no matter where you're at, even if it's in an Uber.
Yep.
So yeah, look into apps like that. Look into programs.
Okay. You're moving into a new neighborhood, and you don't really know the area that well. Is there anything that some travelers should know or listeners should know about moving into a new area?
Yeah. So it's going to sound a little off kilter here. Bear with me. So new neighborhood, obviously you want to look at the state of the neighborhood. Is there trash on the street? Are there playgrounds nearby? Do they look 40 years old, dilapidated, like no one goes there? How are the houses? Are the yards well kept? Do people mow their yards? Do they care about their yards? Stuff like that you need to look out for. And I'm kind of one of the people that I don't care what my neighbor's yard looks like. I could care less. Maybe the young thing. I don't know. The old guys get off my lawn. I don't care about my lawn. That's me. But it is important in terms of safety. So someone who doesn't care about the lawn, someone in it, like I said, it sounds silly. Someone who doesn't care that their shutters are falling off the front of their house. Someone who doesn't care that their mailbox is broken. If the whole block looks like that, if half the block looks like that, that might be a bad sign. Might be a bad indicator. People might seem nice enough, and some people are nice, but even nice people know mean people. So there could be some bad times on the way in neighborhoods like that.
Something that I look for, and I don't know if this is a St. Louis native thing or if other cities have this as well, but looking for, especially the gas stations, if you look at them and they have the bars in the windows.
Yeah, that's a bad sign.
It's usually like one of the checks on the list. It's not like an automatic thing, but it's a check.
Yeah, it's pretty nice things.
Yeah,
like that.
And then you're looking at like a parking lot, and there's like a chain that's around with like wire on top. There are some signs
Stuff like that goes without saying.
Graffiti and things like that, and just being aware of the area. That
we saw someone earlier, just like a block or two from here, that had their water fountain chained to their front porch. It's not a direct indicator that you're in a bad neighborhood, but you're in an area where bad stuff can happen.
Yeah.
So, you got to look for stuff like that. I would say this is a decent neighborhood right now, but like I said earlier, bad stuff can happen anywhere. Yeah. So, if bad stuff tends to happen more often, you'll find things like people chaining their water fountain to their front porch. So that can happen.
I just saw it was on the local news. Somebody had to start like they had the hanging plants in their front porch, and somebody kept coming by and stealing their hanging plants from the front porch.
It's crazy.
So they started like fixating it onto the actual like building itself, and they had a camera out there. This person runs up, tries to take it, and it's just fixated on the house. It's like not going anywhere. It's just like jiggling with it, and then eventually it like runs off. But I don't know if you can see that from the front yard, but it was just something that came to mind.
So a lot of people are buying the video doorbells.
Yeah.
Nowadays, which is a wonderful investment. Not only do they record audio and video, but they get video people in your motion. They record motion, so you'll catch the mailman more often than not. But they have apps for those as well. You'll get a phone notification. That's really, really handy. During my time as a police officer, we've solved so many cases off of the video doorbells. Because the video quality really is incredible. It's I feel like it's something that everyone should have if you're serious about home safety and all. Something else I saw, I used to be a mailman as well at one point in my life. Something I saw delivering the mail that I had never thought about until I started walking to everybody's house in town was a lot of people have boxes, lock boxes, specific for packages. Package theft is insanely popular nowadays.
Okay.
More and more people are shopping online. More and more people are spending a lot of money online, and it's kind of like winning the lottery. You just drive down the street to street. You might strike out with a couple boxes, but you get someone with some $600 whatever from eBay, and you can take that down the street and sell it to someone for a couple $100. That's a good payday for you. So having a dedicated box, more often than not, when I was delivering the mail, I'd see a little sign, mailman, put the package in the box and please close the lock, which I was happy to do. Didn't want to see people getting their stuff stolen. But it was, you would see like the, like those big plastic boxes that people put their pool noodles in, or whatever on their pool decks, little storage containers, 2x4 foot box, and it just got a little lock on it, and I thought, wow, that's ingenious. Of course. Why wouldn't you lock up the stuff? You're alive. And more often than not, the mailman delivers it at 10 a.m. Sitting on your front porch for 6, 7, 8 hours a day.
Absolutely.
So it's important. Protect your investments.
Moving into a place, there have been accounts of travelers moving into a place, and there are like alarm clocks that you can buy now that have a recording device in them. And one of these travelers were undressing in front of the camera. There's two lights coming out of this alarm clock, or there's a funny light on it. Something's not right, and they look closely further into it, and actually it was a recording device.
Wow.
So there are recording devices that you can have. That's the horror story that somebody's like watching you within your own personal like safety area. But there are things out there that you can buy in order to kind of keep an eye on your stuff. So if you have a host of a place that is actually coming to your room and going through stuff, there are things out there that you can buy in order to monitor that.
Yeah.
Whether it be a simple webcam, whether it be something as sneaky as an alarm clock, or there's other items as well. There's also apps out there. If you have an old cell phone, you can upload them to the app through Wi-Fi, and you set them up, and then it goes off of vibration, motion, light sensitivity, basically you name it. It's very pricey, but it might use your cell phone. It's more for like people worried about really somebody coming in their home area, safety area, and accessing very important documents, but that is something that you can invest in as well.
If it's not an environment you're familiar with, first and foremost, obviously check for things like that. A lot of people don't think about stuff like that, but unfortunately today there are cameras everywhere. Everywhere. That's something they teach you being a police officer, especially being a police officer. Everyone's got a camera in their pocket. So there's no reason why there wouldn't be a camera in a room you're living out, or a space you're living in that's not yours. So yeah, just be aware of that.
Yeah, persons that have, you can buy recorders for or cameras for your dash cam or something like that, like a police officer would have. And they can record anything that happens, facing the front of their vehicle.
Oh yeah, it's a wonderful investment. I was just talking with Catherine the other day about getting one. All the time people try to, they'll cause an accident on purpose and then get out saying it's your fault. I watched a video the other day where a driver pulled up behind another car at a stoplight. They were kind of on an incline. The car in front of him let off their brakes. You could see their brake lights. The car rolled back and hit this guy's car, hit his truck. The driver of the first car gets out and, why did you back? Why did you rear end me? I'm calling the cops. There's so much damage on the car. Deal was she was driving around looking for someone to roll back into. She had existing damage on her vehicle, wanted someone else to foot the bill. Luckily, this guy had a dash cam, caught it all on camera. Of course, as soon as he said, "Well, let me get my camera. When the cops show up, you're calling the cops. They're going to want this footage." Of course, she changed her story. Oh no, let's not get the cops involved. Never mind. I'm sorry. Your truck's not really damaged. I'm just going to be on my merry way. Luckily for her, he decided not to call the police, but he did upload the footage. So just be aware. There are people who will swing you in any way they can. Really, people looking for a buck, and unfortunately, insurance fraud is really prevalent.
Yeah.
So when you have, provided you're not in the wrong, you're not the person at fault in an accident, you have footage, it can save you a couple bucks in the long run.
Absolutely. Okay, so some more funner questions. Do you have a favorite travel story?
Favorite travel story? I do.
Okay.
I do.
Is it front flipping through somebody's door while they're?
No, that's okay. It's a funny story. I don't know if you guys know about this one or not. A buddy of mine, a while back, was in a room with another person, and I knew they were up to no good in there. And I knew it was in this person's best interest not to be hanging out with that other person, so I decided to front flip through this door that was locked. It was locked. Being an individual of large stature, you can front flip through doors, provided you have the acrobatics to do so. And so you're the door. You're running at full speed, and you flip, and your rump hits the door right at that sweet spot. Right by the door handle. The door usually flies open. It's a cheap door. It's a hotel door. It's a cheap door, flies right open. You scare everyone on the other side of the door. That's a fun story. There is a good story. It's fairly recent. This was a couple years ago, 3 years ago. I was traveling with my mother out to North Carolina to meet my nephew for the first time. He's 2 weeks old. Right? He was just born. I'm going to go talk to my brother, meet my nephew, this newborn baby. I'm a fresh member of the Uncle Club. It was this really cool trip, but we're driving all the way across the country, right? From southeast Missouri to Charlotte, North Carolina, which is a long drive. I drive the whole way. We stop at a couple places along the way. We stop at this real big truck stop, huge bathrooms. Here's something interesting about this particular truck stop. So as you walk in, and there's a sign that says restrooms this way, of course you follow the sign. Okay, bathrooms. As you get to the restrooms, there's the typical archway with a door on each side, right? The sign above the archway has the little male sign with the straight legs and female sign with a little skirt. Males on the left, females on the right. I look at the sign. I gotta pee really bad. I've been driving for like 8 or 9 hours at this point. I gotta pee. Like, okay, cool, bathroom right there left. So I go in. I find a stall. I gotta do more than pee, I guess. And I sit down in the stall. I don't even observe my surroundings, which goes against my number one rule.
It's awareness.
It's awareness, right? I was totally aloof, unaware. So I run to this bathroom, I sit down, I'm doing my business. The door opens. I hear someone come in. They're talking on their phone. And I think this person sounds a hell of a lot like a girl. That's weird. She's probably in the wrong bathroom. So I'm doing my business, door opens again, someone else comes in. It's like, man, that sounds like high heels. sounds like some really tall high heels coming across this bathroom floor. They decide to go in the stall next to me. I'm wearing shorts at the time with athletic shoes. And they sit down next to me, and I take a look at their shoes, and they were high heels. And I realize that they have shaved legs. And now I'm thinking, it's probably not a coincidence that two women walked into the restroom I'm in right now. So I kind of move my legs out of view from the person in the stall next to me. So I'm kind of doing this, sitting to the right. Like, they don't need to see my hairy legs. I'm being really quiet as well at this point. The door opens again. Two more people walk in. They both happen to sound like women. I was like, man, I am in a pickle here. So my mother's out in the car waiting on me. So I do the only thing I know how, and that is ask mom for help. I'm in trouble. So I pull out the cell phone and I say, Mom, help. And I hit send. And she says, what's wrong? Where are you? You've been in the bathroom for a long time. I say, I know, I'm done, but I can't leave. So she tries to call me. I deny the call. Right? No, can't talk. Can't talk, only text. Right? She says, why'd you deny my phone call? I said, long story, can only text. She says, all capital letters, where are you? I'm in the bathroom. I was like, well then why'd you ask? Long story short, my mom comes in, I text her the story, I think I'm in the late room. Everyone in the bathroom, and I hear the door open, and I hear, Josh? Yes? And she busts out laughing. She's laughing so hard she can hardly talk. I'm like, is this supposed come out of the bathroom? She's like, yeah, get out of here, get out of here. So I run out of the stall, run out of the bathroom. I'm like, oh my god, thank you, Mom, holy crap. She was watching for people for a minute. And first he said, go to the men's room and wash your hands. I was like, all right, I can do that. So that's what I did. That's a true story. That is a true
Oh,
story.
it involved your mother.
It involves my mom. Yeah.
That was great. So she made you wash your hands.
She made me wash my hands.
Yeah. Did you drive after that?
I drove.
You drove?
I drove. Yeah, we didn't stop at any more truck stops. So it's confusing though. So the signs above the little archway with the two doors, men, women. When you get in there, it was women, men. So hopefully they fixed that. Because I'm sure I wasn't the first person to do that. I hope I wasn't the first person to do that. You get in a hurry, you gotta run to the bathroom. I mean, hey, stuff happens. But
Oh my gosh. All right. Going back to being an officer, what's the surprising benefit of being an officer? What's the surprising challenge?
So you don't really understand the impact you're going to have on people on a day-to-day basis. And what's crazy is it's all in your hands. There's something they call officer discretion. There's so much you can do for people, and at the same time you feel like you're not doing enough for them. But at the end of the day, I got so many wonderful people reaching out to me, telling me I made their day better, I changed their life. I gave them a better attitude towards police, whatever, you name it. Anything small, small gratitude from people like that was wonderful. On long shifts, a lot of people don't realize that police work really, really long, grueling shifts. 17-hour days were pretty normal. And at the same time, you go from call to call. It can be the gradients all over the place. You can go from really, really intense stuff, to dead bodies to helping little kids cross the street within 10 minutes. It's all over the place. So what was the original question?
What is a surprising benefit?
Yeah, the benefit would be the impact you make on people's lives, and whether they remember it or not that doesn't affect me. I remember, how they made me feel in the moment. There are a lot of challenges in police officers, especially nowadays. I feel like police are under more scrutiny than they've ever been in years. It's difficult. It's really, really difficult being a police officer. So a big challenge is at the same time, you know, having all these benefits, having people close to you not understand why you want to do the job. Right? It's a bad time to be a cop. It's a bad time to be a cop. Yeah, I get that, but while I agree with that in a sense, it is a bad time to be a cop. I think there's no better time to be a good cop. Right now, the world really needs good police, but America specifically needs police officers. So I mean, there are challenges. You face people that hate you just because you have a badge on your chest. They hate you. It's a deep hatred, and it's sad when you encounter that, because you know that stems from some poor experience they had at some point, probably with law enforcement. A lot of it's learned, a lot of it's cultural, a lot of it's passed down. You know, don't trust the cops. But more often than not, it comes from a poor experience, and I want to change that. I wanted to change people's perception of the police. You know, police can do good. We're here to do good for you. And that comes from the grueling shifts. People who've done it for 20 or 30 years, you know, they get burnt out. You know, they're not as compassionate as they once were. Sometimes you just have a bad apple who shouldn't be doing the job, and sometimes these people interact with these cops that you know probably should be doing their lives, and that can kind of ruin it for a lot of us. Because unfortunately, cops are held to a higher standard, right? If you decide to do this job, you need to be a specific kind of person. Unfortunately, the filter doesn't always filter all those people out. They get in, they get the job, and they can kind of mess things up for a lot of people. So there are challenges to being a police officer, and a big challenge is changing the public perception of the police. I took pride in being a good police officer. I wanted to help people. That's why I got into it. I've had a couple injuries. I've had to kind of rethink my career path. I'm really young, and I have trouble getting out of bed in the morning. So, unfortunately, that's part of the course of being a cop. You know, you've got to sacrifice life, literally, foot surgery, for people you don't even know. So that's another challenge. It's personal safety, kind of a topic that's been really big in this podcast. Personal safety. Officers throw their own personal safety out the window more often than not, you know, to help someone else get home at the end of the day. Yeah, kudos to all the good cops out there. All the cops who do good. There's a lot of them. Most cops are good cops. Don't let one bad apple ruin the bunch, I'd say.
And you bring that up, and I think that's we've had this conversation. We've had a lot of conversations over the years, but there's something you brought up, and that with every profession, whether you be a nurse, whether you be a therapist, sonographer, radiologist, officer, there are the good, the bad, and the WTF. Within the jobs, and we had that conversation. I thought it was very good. And my father was one of those that really had a strong distrust of police officers. But through my experience growing up with the martial arts, through seeing you and what you've had to go through all different settings, jail, out on the streets, everything, I've gotten to really appreciate what all kind of encompasses what is a law enforcement officer. And so thank you so much for everything you have done and you will do and that you are doing.
Absolutely.
It does make a difference. You do impact people's lives.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
It's the little things, the recognition like that. There are people out there that recognize. But I'm sure you said your father had a poor opinion of police. And I know your dad's a guy. But I'm sure that influenced you at some point in your youth. Right? That probably influenced your opinion on police. And police discover that a lot. There's already this preconceived notion that a cop's going to be an asshole, you know, a mean guy, the bad cop, right? Good cop, bad cop. More often than not, you're going to get the bad cop, son. So, you know, don't trust the police, right? That may have been true at one point. I wasn't always a cop. I don't know. I can't speak for the 80s. I can't speak for the 90s. I can't speak for the 2000s. That may have been true. I don't. But more often than not, a lot of the guys I've worked with over the years, vast majority of the guys I've worked with over the years, guys and gals, men and women, have been extremely professional and extremely wonderful people. Now, as with every job I've had, as with every profession out there, there are bad apples. And that can kind of ruin the bunch. You can kind of get that too.
Yeah.
A lot of people say, well, I tried physical therapy and the guy was he was bad. I'm done with physical therapy, right? No more of that. It's old news. Chiropractors, bad news. You know, medical doctors, bad news. Don't trust doctors, right? It's not all of them. It's not all of them.
Yeah.
Most of them are good. Most PTs are good, right? You get some bad apples. Unfortunately, police matters are very, very important matters that affect a lot of people. When you get one bad apple, you get human beings making mistakes. It can cause a huge ripple effect.
Any books or podcasts or personalities that you follow? Can be travel related, can be officer related, can be literally anything.
So someone who this is a guy who does seminars. He's written a couple books. The book titles are a little brutal. I'll leave those out. You can kind of look into it if you like. Lieutenant Colonel Rex Grossman. He's a retired military professional. He writes a lot of books on a lot of stuff we've talked about tonight: safety, security, mental preparedness. He's one. If you're looking into if you want to get into the mindset of being prepared, thinking about locking your passenger door, you're pumping gas, having stuff like that on the forefront of your mind when you're out and about. He's a good person to look into. Lieutenant Colonel Rex Grossman. He's done some good books. He's done some good talks. As far as personal motivation, I don't know if you're familiar with David Goggins, former Navy SEAL, another military professional, extremely motivational. One of the most motivational people. He's got one of the most extreme underdog stories I've ever heard in my life. David Goggins, you can follow him on Instagram, follow him on Facebook. He's all the time posting inspirational stuff. He was a victim of racism. He was overweight. He was this. He was that. You name it. He had all the disadvantages you can think of growing up. He wanted to be a Navy SEAL. He didn't let anything stop him. He did. He lost like 150 pounds, went to the BUDS program, got through, he became a Navy SEAL. He became one of the biggest badasses in America. And to this day, he's old, he's retired, he's done with the military, but he's still motivational. He's still pushing himself. I feel like everybody needs some motivation now. That's all I can think of off the top of my head.
Okay. Yeah, no, it's good. It's good. And then last little touch that I wanted to talk about is kind of like when we said with the vehicles, you know, it's not if it's going to happen, it's when it's going to happen. Same thing goes with like cybersecurity. One of the apps that I've found that's been really beneficial for me is called Password. There's some other apps out there called LastPass, where you're able to insert this kind of extension onto your web browser. You click on it or you enter your login information, it drops down, it saves it for you, and then you just have one password to get into your database of all these different passwords. So you're not using the same password over and over and over again, which makes it very hard for somebody to break into your stuff or log into your stuff. Also, it has the ability for you to generate a long, like 16-character password, XYZ, 2 semicolon 1 2 XY, like random bunch of numbers, and it remembers that. So all you have to remember is your one password. You log into it, and then it goes into that website. You log in information for these multiple recruitment companies, whether it be for skills checklists, whether it be for payroll, or just your login for your time clock, etc. But thank you so much, Josh, for joining on today's podcast and talking about safety, something that is often as a traveler, when I mentioned it to my parents that I was going to be doing this is the first concern is how, you know, you're going to be going to an area, you don't know anyone, how do you know you're going to be safe driving around stuff. So thank you so much for being on.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it. Listeners, if you're looking for the next episode for the New Medical Nomads podcast, you can find the official launches on newmedicalnomads.com. If you want early access to these episodes, you can follow, subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, and of course, any type of engagement, likes, thumbs up, heart symbols, shares, all that will help us reach other individuals and help other people as well, which is the whole point of this podcast, the whole point of the show. So thank you once again, Josh. And for you travelers, you nomads, everybody have safe travels.